Okay, we're going to begin with Pasha Shlach, this week's reading, where we're in the second year out of Egypt. And a lot has transpired in this very short period of time. 10 months before they left Egypt, they witnessed the Esamakos, the 10 plagues. The Egyptian army, which was the mightiest army in the world, was destroyed with Kriyas Yamsuf. Their oppressors, the most advanced civilization, was decimated over that 10-month period. We left Mitzrayim, but besides the Egyptian army being destroyed, Hashem split the sea on our behalf. And according to Chazal, there's a question, how many miracles did they witness? 50, 200, 250 miracles. And the level of revelation was one of a kind, that even Yechezkel Novi did not see what they witnessed. Moshe sings the Song of the Sea, Oz Yosher, and we say over there, Vayimin B'Hashem Moshe Abdo. They achieved a level of belief. They believed in Hashem and Moshe's servant. They traveled after the destruction of the sea, of the Egyptians through the sea. They have spoils, which are not to be fathomed how much wealth they took. The spoils of the sea were greater than the spoils of Egypt. And they travel to Morah. They come to a bitter oasis. They complain. We're going to die of thirst. Hashem says to Moshe, take a tree, put it in that bitter oasis, the water becomes sweet. They finish the provisions from Egypt. We're going to starve to death. Hashem provides the man. Again, they have a problem with water. They begin complaining. Hashem says to Moshe, strike the rock. And the rock gives enough water, fourth water, to provide to themselves, their livestock, everything. Amalek were attacked by Amalek. We learned the lesson well from Amalek. We're standing at the foot of Sinai. Hashem openly communicates with us. The Aseret Dibros. Moshe sends for 40 days and 40 nights. The last moment, the Jews involved with the golden calf. Moshe comes down, breaks the luchos, pulverizes it. Those who were involved in idolatry are killed. There was a plague, so on and so forth. Over a 120-day period, the Jews are forgiven. They do tshuva, comes down with a second set of tablets. Now, we're told we have to make a mishkan. If we want to be fully reinstated, we build a mishkan. This is all taking place within this 2-year period. And we're finally reinstated. Aaron, his children, are chosen to be the Kohanim on the 8th day of the inauguration. Nadav and Avihu are struck down, the most special 2 children of Aaron. Bikrovi HaKodesh, to teach that even those who are most perfect, God sanctifies his name, to explain and to communicate to them that even though you're nearly perfect, if you fail, there is such a thing as justice. And God instituted justice, and that's why none of you died. Okay? We have the formation of traveling. We're ready to go in. And all of a sudden, right before we're about to go into Eretz Yisrael, the Jews get this bug in their head. We need spies. We need scouts. God said to them, it's Eretz Zovas Chol Dvosh. It's a land that flows with milk and honey. It's a land that you will conquer without a problem. Jews said, no, before we go, we'd like to see what it's all about. But of course, if they would say that, Moshe would never consider even allowing it. But they came with a certain approach that even Moshe Rabbeinu was misled, and he believed that the reason why they wanted to send them, the spies, was because number of approaches, because initially when you go into the land, we don't rely on miracles, and we resort to conventional means of conquest. You send scouts, spies to scout the land. What's the best way to enter into the land, to conquer the land? The weak points, the strong points, so on and so forth. Doesn't make a difference. But the fact is, after all they saw until this moment, I mean, how could there be any level of distrust in Hashem? And we just had an incident with the Slav. The Jews, they were craving for meat, and Moshe warned them, which itself is mind-boggling, that those who eat that meat are going to die. And they gathered endless amounts of meat. Literally, the camp was encircled with piles of the quail. It was piled sky high, relatively speaking. And as soon as they started to eat it, they began dying. And after seeing the hand of Hashem, that when you cross the line, you see what the consequence is, they say, but we'd like to send scouts before we go into the land. And they understand God's ability. And they come back, 10 of the 12 spies come back with very ominous reports. Kalev and Yeshua, the other ones, come back with positive reports. And the Jews favor the 10 over the 2. And after that, it was disastrous. Hashem says, because they lack the faith, despite all they've seen, this generation is not going to the promised land. They will wander over this next 39-year period. Anybody between the age of 20 and 60 will die. Only the new generation will go in. The question is, and Hashem says to Moshe, how much do I have to show them to prove to them that I'm there for them? That they will survive, they will succeed, and what I tell them is exactly what I said. Why are they questioning me? Meaning there was a lack of trust, there was a lack of faith. How do we understand this? And as we'll see in a moment, because they asked for the spies, they asked for the scouts, even before they returned with the ominous reports, Hashem says to Moshe, because they asked, they already forfeited the right to go in. Why? Because asking already is an indication of a lack of trust. Once they've already demonstrated the lack of trust, they already have forfeited the right. However, they have to go through the motions to be deserving of that punishment, because otherwise they're not going to appreciate it. Because like a person who speaks out of turn and says, so what did I say? What did I say? Did I do anything so terrible? So the person who speaks out of turn doesn't appreciate what he said wrong and how bad it was, until it plays out that because he made that comment, later it will show in his behavior, and he will do things which are unconscionable. But that initial statement indicated that ultimately that's what was going to happen. The Jews had to have their scenario play out to understand exactly where they were, how badly they were lacking in trust, that there was this mutiny, almost a mutiny against Moshe. We're not going into a death trap. And this is the parsha of Shlach. Shlach v'Anoshe. It's mind-boggling. How much do we have to see? How much does God have to prove himself that the Jews should have that unswerving faith and continuously testing the waters, continuously through their behavior indicating that there's this lack of trust? Firstly, why is there a lack of trust? And after God has shown that he's there for them, they still lack the trust. Just simple understanding. But before we speak about the lack of trust, the Torah over here juxtaposes the story of Miriam, that she had spoken out of turn about Moshe Rabbeinu, and it was a question to Aaron, her brother, and nobody was closer to Moshe than Aaron and Miriam. But nevertheless, that so-called innocent question, which she made a point, which was a criticism, but it was a question, why is Moshe behaving differently than we behave? That caused that she became a leper. And God stated his case clearly, that if you speak about my servant Moshe, which being who he is and me having the relationship with, immediately tells you that your observation is incorrect. It's clear Moshe did not do anything wrong. Although based on your reading of the script, Moshe fell short of who he should be, because you can't understand why is he different than you are. She became a leper. And Hashem says to Miriam, how did you speak Ba'avdi Moshe, my servant Moshe? Firstly, if he's my servant, you should understand, and I have a relation with him, evidently he did nothing wrong. And it's you're not understanding. Secondly, not only is he Avdi, he's Moshe. Being Moshe and being chosen to be the Goel, evidently he's somebody special. And therefore, as a result of that, you're not reading the script right. And compoundly speaking, he's not only Avdi, he's not only Moshe, he's a combination, he's my servant and he's also Moshe. So he's my servant and Moshe. So there's no question, his decision to separate from his wife evidently was the correct decision, or because it was my dictate, and you're not aware of it. And Miriam realized she made a mistake. She did speak out of turn. It was classified as Lashon Hara. And it was made public knowledge. The Jews waited for a week until she was able to recover and be reinstated. It re-entered into the camp we had read last week. They waited 7 days. The Shekhinah, the clouds of glory, and the 600,000 Jews above the age of 20. Everybody waited for Miriam to recover, and only then did they continue to travel. So this was beyond public knowledge, what happened to Miriam. And what was the claim against Miriam? Even Miriam, as special as she was, if God makes a decision, it's you don't understand. So the Meraglim now, they go to Canaan and they see things. You read the script superficially, it seems to be, it doesn't read right. It seems to be, we're not going to be able to carry through as Hashem says, but maybe you're not reading the script right. As Miriam didn't read the script right, there was a very serious consequence to her, and it became public knowledge. It was unquestioned that what she had said was unacceptable. So if Hashem says the land is the land of milk and honey, and it's the land that you will thrive there, and it's a land that only has good there, and now you see something which seems to be contradictory, don't you realize the takeaway from Miriam should have been, you're not reading the script right. Your reading is an incorrect reading, because it's clear when God says something, God does not renege, and God says what he means. And if it is that land of milk and honey, and it's a land that does not devour its inhabitants, evidently your reading is incorrect. But yet, they're adamant that their reading is correct. And this is why it was a disaster. And it was a lack of faith. Because there are no excuses. God gave them enough of an orientation in the background to understand that you don't make a mistake any longer. This is not a mistake, but this is what? This is a clear statement that you have no interest in having a relationship. And if that is the case, you people don't enter into the land. But it's something, how do we even put it in some level of context of why, after who they were, and these are the leaders, and because they were the leaders, They should be the ones who should understand better than anyone, and even they failed. And they were representing the people. So the people were even on a lesser level. All these people stood at Sinai, and they witnessed God speaking to them, openly communicated with them. God showed them that there's no other power other than himself. And despite everything, they failed. That's the difficulty with the story of the Meraglim, of the spies. Mark, ask your question. Good. It's a very good question.
If the Jews had been forgiven for committing the sin of the Hena Ego, one would think, which is the ultimate of Hashem, and they were forgiven and reinstated, one would think that they should be reinstated from this, which would appear, at least on the surface, to be a lesser sin.
Okay. Now, by the Chet Egel, the Jews believed that Moshe passed away. He died. The one who led us, the one who had a relationship with Hashem, is no longer here. And they believed that they needed an intermediary to be the link between themselves and God himself. The whole concept of paganism is that the deities, that they are the nation's representation, because they're not worthy enough to have a direct relationship with God. The Jews themselves weren't quite that. God is really the one we have a relationship with. However, Moshe passed away, and therefore we need something to compensate for Moshe. This is how they were convinced by the rabble at the time of Sinai, and that brought to the sin of the golden calf. And not all the Jews weren't involved. As we pointed out then, the claim there against them was, how do you remain silent and allow this to take place? You should have actually intervened and quelched it immediately, not allow it. The silence was the basis for the condemnation of the Jewish people. Okay? But there the claim was they didn't appreciate and understand what the basis of relationship with God was. See, now we have Moshe. Moshe's alive. He's no longer alive. We ourselves are not sufficiently worthy to have that relationship. So how are we going to carry on this relationship? Therefore, whatever the Egel represented, and this is, they're going back to their background, because that was the deity of Egypt, it may not be exactly the same level of relationship, that full idolatry, but it'll be something within the realm, and therefore was classified as idolatry. So there it was a misunderstanding of who they were. They need Moshe. Without Moshe, it doesn't happen. Okay. Here it's a lack of trust. It's not a question of misunderstanding. After God shows you all that he said he will carry through, destroys the Egyptians, splits the sea, gives you the Torah, provides the manna, gives the water, everything till this point, levels of confirmation on who he is and how he's dedicated to you, and he will not allow you to perish. And you're what it's all about, and you say, you know something, but maybe all this is a ploy. This lack of trust is worse than a misunderstanding. God says, I've shown them sufficiently who I am, and therefore this is unforgivable. To see me as a betrayer after all I've done, it's like, you know, a parent raises a child the majority of his life, and then the child says to the parent, and there was never a question ever, and it was proven endless times over, the level of dedication of the parent to the child says, you know, all this is a ploy, you're misleading me, because ultimately you want to take me to the gallows and end my life. That's what the child says to the father after having a relationship with him for 60 years, where the father provides for the child beyond anybody's imagination. God says, what I've done for them, what I've shown them, I turned the world over 90 times at a level which is unheard of, and yet they still believe that I'm taking them to a death trap to destroy them, not forgiving them. This has to do with a relationship. There has to do with a belief that they were not sufficiently worthy. They weren't at a level they'd have a direct relationship. That's forgivable. And it's a far cry from then. A lot has transpired since the Chet Egel. And as a result of that, today, unforgivable. Therefore, God says, I will not forgive this generation. The new generation who didn't experience and see what they saw, and they didn't have the level of maturity, because less than the age of 20, you don't carry the same level of culpability. Therefore, they will be the new generation to enter into the land. I had mentioned that the Medrash tells us that when they asked to send the scouts, even before they actually went and came back with the honest reports, they already forfeited the right. Why? And the Midrash says, what is it analogous to? A king says to his son, the prince, I have a wife for you. I personally did my research, and she will be the future queen, and she is compatible at every level for you. She's beautiful, she's brilliant, she's intelligent, poised, capable, everything. And the son should understand, if the father who has the ability and expertise, and the son understands that, if the father is endorsing this woman to be your wife, you should rely on his word. And the son says to the father, Father, I understand what you're saying, but I'd like to see for myself, just to confirm what you're saying is accurate. The father says to the son, it's over. I'm taking the offer off the table. She will not be available to you, because if you question my word, understanding who I am, and you tell me I want to check it out for myself to see if it's accurate and it's correct, she's not for you. I will not give it to you. You forfeit the privilege. God, being so credible, establishes credibility with the Jewish people through all that we've spoken about. And God says it's a land that flows with milk and honey. You will remove them or you will destroy them. We want to see for ourselves. We want to send scouts to see exactly what it's all about. What do you have to see what it's all about? God already has told you what it's all about. If you have trust in God, there's no reason. It's not even a consideration. That you ask the question, that means you question God. It may not be as God says. You know something? That you want scouts, that's enough a reason you forfeited the right to go in. So the question, as we said, he should have quelched it right there. Just stopped it. But he allowed it to play out. Because very often, a person doesn't understand the level of unacceptability, the level of guilt or culpability until it plays out. And it did play out. And it played out, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu allowed it. It was a chil Hashem. He allowed it to play out to the point where it was a public desecration of his name, because anything less than that, they wouldn't have appreciated themselves that why they were not worthy to go in. That's why God allowed it to play out.